Welcome to White Guys for Kamala, our first episode. I'm John Ennis. This is my variant, Morley. We're just a couple guys stepping up. And speaking for myself, I feel like men probably could have done a lot more in 2016 to stand up for Hillary Clinton at that time. I think a lot of us were passive and not necessarily knowing, like, well, it seems like she's got it, and and to a degree it's like let women lead, but there's also so much misogyny and the point where women have to create secret Facebook groups that I think if you're the kind of man that actually cares about women and being strong for women and protecting them, then you should be standing up for them, and when that kind of misogyny that goes against a candidate, it's really any woman candidate is going to take that kind of brunt, by not saying anything, you let it stand, you let it become the narrative. And so this is a good opportunity, I think, this time around for men to understand that, we can have a voice in this and we can be not threatened by the idea of a woman president.
Yeah, I think so much about breaking any kind of stigma is about normalizing and it's about making people recognize that your gender has nothing to do with who you prefer to be a leader, both in terms of the men that could vote for Kamala and obviously Kamala herself being a woman, I find it amazing just because we all have mothers, and who has not recognized the wisdom of their mother at some point, are they always right? Of course not. But are we always right? Almost never.
Yeah.
So I think it's just important that men, especially white men, if you look at the ratios to where they voted and who they voted for in the past few elections, I think it's important that we, normalize as much as we can the idea that men, and specifically white men, are not afraid. Not all of us are afraid to vote for a woman and are excited to see a woman win.
Right. And one of the things that I realized is that, anger is like an intoxicant. Because once you are angry, you feel like sort of righteous, and it just sort of like drowns out all the other feelings of inferiority or insecurity or anxiety that you have. And it's a sense of power. And, when people talk about, why they're drinking, the most common refrain you hear is, it makes me forget my problems.
All right. A numbing agent.
Yeah. And so when you're angry, that feeling can become so empowering that you see so many of the people in the MAGA movement looking for something. If it's the Olympics opening ceremony, if it's a boxer in the Olympics, if it's something that people think they should know about Kamala Harris or something like that, it's this constant well, what are we going to be angry about now kind of thing. Right. It's that fix that they're looking for, and that's what has been the appeal, I think, for the MAGA movement and Trump when he came around. Is a lot of people were like, but he doesn't have any issues. He's not really laying things out like he's supposed to as a politician. And then you look at his rallies and it's just this grievance fest. And It can be about immigration. Yeah. It can be about low flow toilets. What they do have that we have to recognize is that sort of community, that they're together. They're all sharing those feelings. And so that's what they're bonded by, is that resentment at something else,
Yeah, they're certainly finding, I think, more camaraderie in the things they're against than the things that they're for. And I think that it's interesting. I remember very vividly back in the old days of 2015, 16, I remember Newt Gingrich talking about feelings. He said he was being interviewed and he's like, the economy is down, jobs are down, everything is just awful right now. And the journalist sort of in the moment fact checked him and said, actually, that's not true. This is the jobs are not down, the economy's not down. He's like, but it feels that way. And you sort of realize that it was a silly sort of thing, but it was a profound moment where I was like, this is the new politics. It's the politics of not facts, but how things feel. And so I think we do ourselves a disservice to dismiss that, even though it's very easy to say, well, that's an inane, way to live your life, yeah. Because ultimately I think that a lot of these people that elected Donald Trump elected him based on feelings and this idea of I feel overlooked. I feel like the intellectuals have dismissed me, and all these things that we sort of now can look back on and say, oh, well, that was what Hillary Clinton did wrong. But to me, it feels like acknowledging that, but at the same time, I think we have to get better at saying it's like, I'm a parent, you're a parent. And it's so interesting to me how often I see my child have these really big feelings. And the most important thing is to not dismiss them and to acknowledge them, but at the same time recognize that, like, you cannot govern, in this case, be a parent, but in the case of, you know, the presidency, you can't govern based on feelings. You know, you have to govern based on facts. And so for me, I feel like that is exactly why he was elected. And it was also why he was the kind of president that he was. You know, I mean, you look at what he accomplished, and with the exception of getting a lot of judges in a lot of very important places, and, you know, enriching a lot of wealthy people, you can see that, like, he you know, all he's doing is then sort of just trying to placate people's feelings, because that's all he really was elected on, was their feelings. And this idea that, like, you know, I had a conversation with my friend today, and we were talking about the challenge of Make America Great Again is this notion that we have to go back. We have to go back to when things were better. The flip side of that is progressives saying we need to move forward to an idealized perfect place. And both are kind of, both are fantasies in the sense that they're not realized yet. The fantasy of the past is that it actually wasn't as great as you remember it. Certainly wasn't for everybody, you know, but maybe for some people it was. And then the fantasy of the idealized version of where we could go, you know, in the progressive, you know, perfection that we could one day attain. Maybe we'll get some, you know, movement, some progress, but it's not necessarily something that will definitely be realized. It's still something you're striving for. So both are essentially fantasies, and you've got these two camps that are kind of trying to pull the other side with them. You've got the people saying, no, we need to make America the way it was. So they're pulling progressives, and progressives saying, no, we need to make it the way that it should be. And they're pulling. And to me, I feel like the only true way forward is to find someplace in the middle, you know? And so I think that's why it's so important when you talk about rage being an intoxicant, is to recognize, because you see that on both sides. You certainly see, you know, hard left people that are saying nothing but perfection will work for me, you know, and it's deceptive to feel like I'm doing something just by being angry.
Yes, exactly.
You know, that is, I'm making some kind of progress with whatever I believe in just by laying it on somebody else.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that, you know, we have to keep remembering is that politics is addition, not subtraction. You know, here's a clip of Kamala speaking at a rally, and specifically on immigration, which right away became one of the hot issues.
Mm-hmm.
I was the Attorney General of a border state. In that job, I walked underground tunnels between the United States and Mexico on that border with law enforcement officers. I went after transnational gangs, drug cartels, and human traffickers that came into our country illegally. I prosecuted them in case after case, and I won. Donald Trump, on the other hand, has been talking a big game about securing our border, but he does not walk the walk. Or as my friend Quavo would say, he does not walk it like he talks it. Where's Quavo?
Shout out to me.
So look, our administration worked on the most significant border security bill in decades. Some of the most conservative Republicans in Washington, D.C. supported the bill. Even the Border Patrol endorsed it. It was all set to pass. But at the last minute, Trump directed his allies in the Senate to vote it down. Right. He tanked the bipartisan deal because he thought it would help him win an election. Which goes to show Donald Trump does not care about border security. He only cares about himself.
So one of the things that came out right away after Kamala became the Democratic frontrunner was that she failed as border czar to secure our borders. Here's a tweet with a video saying that she got the title, and this is where President Biden gave her the title. And when you actually look at the video from End Wokeness, you'll see that he actually did not.
The VP today, because she's the most qualified person to do it, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle and the countries that help. We're going to need help in stemming the movement of so many folks stemming the migration to our southern border.
So he never called her border czar in that. He just said, I asked her to lead this, diplomatic issue. And so here's a quote saying border czar Kamala Harris and a Trump ad that attacks her. And you'll see that they cite the National Review, which is the august conservative publication. And it matters because Republicans giving her this title is part of the whole, like, she failed thing.
Right.
So this is Jim McGovern in a hearing questioning the source of this.
About saying that she's criticizing her as the border czar. She was never appointed as a border czar, never called that. Where is that coming from? I mean, it's made up. I mean, why is it in the resolution? Show me where President Biden said that.
I didn't draft the resolution, Mr. McGovern, but I know that it is well known that she has been referred to repeatedly as the border czar.
You're testifying on behalf of this resolution.
Correct.
And
I'm here to defend the resolution.
All right, so the question is, I'm asking you, since you are here to testify on the resolution, where did President Biden announce that Vice President Harris was, quote, the border czar? Where did he say that?
I don't have the information, and I don't know that I could point to a particular time that he's used that phrase.
Well, the reason why you don't have the information is because he didn't.
And you'll see people online quickly go, well, she was in charge of the border. And you have to remember that, the Department of Homeland Security is technically in charge of the border. We know that Republicans know that the Department of Homeland Security is in charge of the border. How do we know that they're aware of this fact? Because just this year, they tried to impeach the Secretary of Homeland Security over the border, and they failed. We have not approached this process lightly. Secretary Mayorkas's actions have forced our hand. We cannot allow this border crisis to continue. But these are the facts. So Kamala Harris was not in charge of the border. She was asked to lead diplomatic efforts to reduce poverty, violence, and corruption in Central America's Northern Triangle countries of Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, as well as engage with Mexico on the issue. And here is a headline saying Kamala Harris to announce new private investments aimed at slowing Central America migration. The Washington Post, the efforts appear to have some impact. Border arrests from those countries dropped from 700,000 in the 2021 fiscal year to fewer than 500,000 in 2023, according to Customs and Border Protection data. The downward trend has continued in 2024. For instance, nearly 77,000 migrants from those countries crossed a border in June 2021, and the figure dropped to 24,000 in June of this year.
But it feels like she's the border czar.
But it feels like she should have done something more.
Yeah.
Now, here's some claims about Harris never having visited the border, because that was a big thing. Here's a tweet saying Biden gave her one job as VP and she didn't do anything about it. She didn't even visit the border. Here's another one saying they have done nothing to fix America since Biden-Harris has been in office. She was in charge of the border and didn't even visit the border once in 4 years. She hates Americans and thinks we're stupid. And here's a photo of her visiting the border to see the problems firsthand in El Paso, where a mass shooting had happened, specifically around these issues of hating migrants. Now, the real question is, why did Donald Trump kill the toughest border legislation in years back in January? Here's Romney criticizing Trump for telling senators not to vote for their own legislation.
I think the border is a very important issue for Donald Trump, and the fact that he would communicate to Republican senators and congresspeople that he doesn't want us to solve the border problem because he wants to blame Biden for it is really appalling.
Here's Trump bragging on two separate occasions that he told senators to kill the border bill that Mitch McConnell had advanced.
A lot of the senators are trying to say respectfully they're blaming it on me. I said, that's okay, please blame it on me, please, because they were getting ready to pass a very bad bill. And I'll tell you what, a bad bill is, I'd rather have no bill than a bad bill.
He says here in this town hall that the border bill was better for the opposing side.
Why were you against the House, against the Senate border deal, the bipartisan border?
Well, they allow 5,000 people a week. Number one, that, but it also made it much better for the opposing side.
Transitioning to another segment this week in Men Making Men Look bad. Here's someone, Andrew Tate, male influencer who's fully toxic, and he was able to jump into the media by protesting the opening ceremonies of the Paris Olympics.
And to sit here and let France mock the country, mock your religion, make fun of every single thing you feel holy. This is the Last Supper. This is everything holy about Christianity, and we say absolutely nothing about it and say, oh, you cannot even complain. What are we doing wrong by saying that this is disgusting? This is not art.
Andrew Tate made a big deal about becoming Muslim last year, and yet he's still able to be offended as a Christian and take action when he sees that there's a manufactured controversy on the right and have to do all this. And second of all, he's charged with sex trafficking in 2 different countries. So as far as like the holy living or the sacred example, or, you know, that's a little bit more offensive, I think, to the Christian mindset.
All of that stuff is just hilarious to me, because how many paintings do we have with Jesus, you know, standing next to Donald Trump? And let's just Google real quick, Last Supper, Donald Trump. You'll find someone who painted it, you know, in a very reverent way. And I mean, it's ridiculous, because also let's not forget, the Last Supper is not a biblical statement. It's a piece of art that was painted by Leonardo da Vinci, who's just a guy.
Right.
I mean, like,
right.
Like what? There is nothing sacred about that piece of artwork. There's
right.
nothing that it's not tied. It's not printed within each Bible. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's just a piece of artwork that, yes, is depicting a scene from the Bible, but so was Piss Christ or whatever.
Yes,
Well,
true.
You know, like,
That's true.
It's ridiculous to act as though we need to hold, just a regular, a famous, sure, but a piece of artwork created by a man, to hold it to some sort of standard as though it's sacred and can't be referenced.
Right, yeah, and that certainly serves that outrage fix. But I thought it was also funny because he's not a country when he says he's boycotting the Olympics. He's not a country
right.
holding his athletes back like, you know, the U.S. or Russia has had to do in the past. In fact, he can't even attend the games in Paris because he's not allowed to leave Romania while he's on trial for human trafficking.
I only know vaguely about this story because it's one of those stories that kind of just like floats through the transom. It's like, you know, when Steve Bannon is like, flood the zone with shit. It's
right.
like, this is sort of one of those things that just kind of floats in, and you're like, oh, that's what people care about, right? Oh, wait, no, it's this thing now, you know. But like, as I understand it, that is it even a depiction of the Last Supper? And I know that this is a sort of, you know, point that's been made, but as far as like everybody complaining on the right about wokeness and oversensitivity and snowflakeness, but it's like, obviously there's just anything that they hope can outrage people.
Cancel the Olympics.
Yeah, cancel the Olympics, you know?
Just like that, yeah.
Just like that.
Yeah. Now, in another segment, here's Don't Be That Guy. So, White Dudes for Harris launched a week ago. Our show is White Guys for Kamala. And I was particularly impressed by how far Brian Kilmeade went with the idea of just how threatened he was by this.
It was basically saying, if you want to be accepted by women, you should vote for a woman. Now, I don't see why any man would vote Democrat. It's not the party of virtue, security. It's not the party of strength. It's definitely not the party of family. And to be a man and then vote for a woman just because she's a woman is either childish, that person has mommy issues, or they're just trying to be accepted by other women. And I heard the scientists say the other day that when a man votes for a woman, he actually transitions into a woman.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, that's what the science says.
That's science.
I'm sure the people who have spent $50,000 on their transition would have liked to have known that all they had to do was vote for a woman. But to throw out that kind of like scientific, you know, threat, that's like, you know, that's up there with like hairy hands, you know. I mean, if you make that face, it'll stay that way.
Sometimes I just get lost in watching these people and thinking like, are they like true believers, or is this just that they know how to perform the role they've been given and they can just kind of keep ahead and they can riff on it for a long time.
And these like low threshold of like, well, if you're just voting her just because she's a woman,
right?
You know, and you know, what is that? I mean, that sort of gives it away. It's like, well, why are you voting for Trump? Is it just because he's a loud white guy? Is that really all? Because I mean, we got issues. You know, people on the left and Democrats, you know, we're pretty hard on our candidates. I think it's quite the opposite of the Republicans, and so I think it just shows how freaked out they are.
These guys, they don't recognize that it just comes off as just like angry, and it doesn't come off as angry in a way that is human. It comes across as angry in a way that is old-fashioned, and certainly selfish, and also, you know, toxic, and all of these other things, you know, that they want to just dismiss. But I think, you know, it's obvious to me why there's a lack of humor there. There's a lack of truth to that, to what he's saying. You know?
Yeah, but the scientists. You know?
But the scientists.
And I think it's so interesting. They don't want to listen to scientists about COVID. They don't want
Right.
to listen about scientists. They want to listen to scientists about the climate.
Yeah.
Or gun violence or things like that.
Testicle tanning.
Oh yeah.
Scientist approved.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a thing. Yeah. That's scientists. You know. Here's someone who is a good example for White Dude of the Week. Here is Doug Emhoff. This is a particularly joyful photo of him from this past week, campaigning with Kamala. One of the things I've always really liked about him, and why he's such a quintessential role model, I think, for guys, especially white guys, is that he's so fine with his wife having a powerful job. He's willing to give up his career to go support her. He's not sitting there saying, what about me? Why aren't I in the spotlight more? He's not hogging the camera from her. He's so happy to just support his wife. And I think that's such a good example that I think a lot of guys, I mean, frankly, you know, the patriarchy raises us with this idea that like men have to be in charge, and when guys don't know what they're doing, they freak out and they sort of blame things around them, and they get mad, and they, you know, feel self-conscious, and they lash out at others when things don't go their way. And these are things we keep talking about on this podcast.
I mean, empowering your partner to me seems more pro-family than the idea that a family is hierarchical,
right?
And that it's like at the top of the pyramid is the father who's making all the decisions. Underneath is the doting wife that's supporting him, and then there's all the children that are, you know. And to me, it just seems like if you're going to start saying like, oh, Democrats aren't pro-family, or they're not, you know, they don't care about family values and things like that. And to me, it seems like, wouldn't you want an example of someone who's saying, no, this is a partnership, and we're all a team. You know, there isn't just one person who's in charge of everything, and then everybody sort of just like rallies around them like some sort of a, you know, general directing an army. But it's like, can't we look at a family, and can't we look at that dynamic as being something where the power is shared?
Right.
You know?
So in focus, and we'll start to head out on this, is one thing I'd like people to keep talking about, because, you know, headlines about Trump come and go and they don't seem to stick. But last week, the Washington Post broke a story about $10 million in cash from Egypt that seemed to go straight to Trump after he donated $10 million of his own money, supposedly, to his campaign. And investigations into the DOJ were derailed by Attorney General Bill Barr, who we saw do that with other things like the Mueller report. And so Mueller even had a team investigating it, specifically dedicated, just called Team 10, to keep it on the down low, to try to understand. And so one thing I've learned, I've made 2 feature documentaries now about money in politics. One was Pay to Play, about Citizens United and how that birthed super PACs. And another one was Fish in a Barrel, about how Russia used the NRA to launder money into the 2016 election to buy key ad space at the pivotal times to help support Trump. And, you know, the problem is that our campaign finance laws and our structures are very opaque, and they're not enforced. And so the idea that this is now the statute of limitations of 5 years has expired from when this happened. And so it's not even subject to a crime anymore, but it is something that the press should be talking about, because Trump has referred to the dictator from Egypt as his favorite dictator, which is, you know, a slight to Kim Jong-il, his love letter writer, and Putin. Here is this bit that starts to sort of explain how these problems unfold.
We're proud of our campaign fundraising totals this quarter, bringing in $2.3 million for the governor's re-election campaign.
Did the super PAC supporting the governor make as much money?
I don't know. We don't coordinate with the super PAC. A super PAC is a totally separate entity with independent expenditures under free speech guidelines, not part of a candidate's campaign. We're prevented by law from coordinating with the super PAC. You'll have to ask this guy. Yes, thank you. We are proud to announce our super PAC raised $10.5 million this quarter.
He looks just like you.
That's not me. That's my twin brother, with whom I do not coordinate. I mean, maybe I see him during the holidays and sing some carols, but we are not coordinated. No, not coordinated.
Well, how do we know you're not coordinating?
Because I'm here talking to you, and my brother's downtown fundraising with some foreign factory owners. No coordination.
Why did the governor's campaign only raise $2 million while the governor's super PAC brought in $10 million?
The campaign did pretty well for donations capped at $3,000. Yeah, my job's pretty easy when some guy with an earpiece can drop $1 million in my lap over lunch.
Wait. Why aren't the contributions to super PACs subject to limit?
Well, the two entities are totally different, see? Our campaign spends money we raise on mailing, staff, polling, TV, internet, and radio ads. Right, and our super PAC independently spends money we raise on mailing, staff, polling, TV, internet, and radio ads.
But that's the same thing. You just added an Oxford comma.
Nuh-uh.
Says who?
Courts.
What courts?
Law courts.
Are you making this up?
No. It was Supreme Court, D.C. Circuit, and some other circuits. All the top circuits. All the top circuits are saying this. Look, the courts decided back in the 70s that campaign contributions should have limits. After Watergate, large sums of anonymous cash being handed off looked bad.
But wait, isn't that what super PACs are? Large sums of cash being handed off anonymously?
Yes, exactly. No, how dare you, sir?
I'm not sure this makes sense legally.
If someone were to make a big contribution to the governor's campaign, they could, expect something in return, a quid pro quo. So if you keep the campaign contribution limits low, there's less pro quo,
But why can't a donor to a super PAC expect something in return for their large contribution?
Jeez, this guy. Because the super PAC is not the one in office, so a donor can't make a quid pro quo deal with the super PAC, silly.
No, if the donor makes a quid pro quo deal with the candidate to give their money to the super PAC. I mean, it's kind of an obvious loophole.
It's a First Amendment issue. Asking for a bribe is, we believe, protected by free speech. Free speech. That means you can commit crimes if you explain them while you're doing them.
I don't think that's what it means.
Maybe a circuit said it. What do you know?
So that's our show. Thank you very much for watching White Guys for Kamala. And I'd like to just give you this. We don't have a Patreon, but feel free to donate to White Dudes for Kamala, or White Dudes for Harris at secure.actblue.com/donate/white dudes. And we'll keep those numbers up and keep setting an example. Tune in next week. We'll have a very special guest and more fun stuff to talk about, I'm sure. It's awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This episode was recorded at Green Lab Studios in Los Angeles, California. Our engineers were Paul Roman, Daniel Amato, and Owen Stinsmullen.